I haven't touched a black woman in 12 years. The words hung in the dusty air like smoke from a dying fire. Clara Mayfield stood frozen beside the stagecoach, her worn carpetbag clutched tight in weathered hands. The man before her removed his hat with trembling fingers. His voice had cracked like dry timber. The trading post fell silent. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Clara studied the stranger's face. Deep lines carved valleys around pale blue eyes. Gray streaked his dark beard. This was Boone Callahan, her husband. She had traveled 800 miles for this moment, left Georgia with nothing but hope and a crumpled letter promising respectability. The advertisement had been simple: mountain man seeking companionship. No mention of whatever haunted those blue eyes now. "Ma'am," Boone's voice came softer now. He stepped forward, boots kicking up small clouds of dust. "I didn't expect." He stopped, swallowed hard. His gaze moved over her face like he was seeing a ghost. Clara lifted her chin. The other passengers whispered behind her. A woman in a faded bonnet clicked her tongue. Two men in dusty suits exchanged knowing looks. "Mr. Callahan." Clara's voice held steady despite the hammering in her chest. "I am Clara Mayfield." "You're intended." Boone nodded once, quick and sharp. His hands worked the brim of his hat. "Yes, yes, you are." The stagecoach driver cleared his throat. "We got a schedule, folks." Clara picked up her bag. The leather handle was slick with sweat from her palms. She had nowhere else to go, no money for return passage, no family waiting back in Georgia. Boone gestured toward the trading post, a weathered building with a sagging porch. "Preachers inside, if you're willing, as if she had a choice now." Clara walked past the staring faces. Her boots echoed on the wooden boardwalk. Boone followed 3 steps behind. She could feel his presence like heat from a forge. Inside, the trading post smelled of leather and tobacco. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with tools and supplies. A woman behind the counter watched with sharp eyes. Her graying hair was pulled tight in a bun. "Martha Sinclair." The woman nodded toward Clara. "I run this place." "Clara Mayfield." "Not for long, I'd guess." Martha's eyes flicked toward Boone. Something passed between them, a warning maybe, or a question. An elderly man emerged from the back room. Black suit, white collar. He carried a worn Bible under his arm. "Preacher Wilson." He smiled kindly at Clara. "I understand congratulations are in order." Clara's throat felt dry as desert sand. She glanced back at Boone. He stood near the door like he might bolt any moment. "Are you certain, child?" The preacher's voice was gentle. "Marriage is not to be entered lightly." "I'm certain." The lie came easier than expected. They gathered before a small wooden cross mounted on the wall. Martha and 2 other customers served as witnesses. The preacher opened his Bible. Pages rustled in the silence. "Dearly beloved." The familiar words washed over Clara. She had imagined this moment differently. A small church maybe. Flowers. A groom who didn't look like he was facing execution. Boone's voice came steady when he spoke his vows, but his hands shook when he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger. His touch was brief, electric. "You may kiss the bride." Boone hesitated. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he might refuse. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead, gentle as morning mist. "Mrs. Callahan." His whisper was meant for her alone. Martha produced a bottle of whiskey. The witnesses toasted their union with small glasses. Clara sipped the burning liquid and tried to smile. Outside, Boone loaded her bag into a wagon. The horse was a sturdy bay mare with intelligent eyes. "My place is up the mountain." Boone's words were clipped, efficient. "It's simple but clean." Clara climbed onto the wagon seat. The springs creaked under her weight. Boone settled beside her but kept careful distance between them. They rolled out of town as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks. The road was little more than 2-wheel ruts carved into red dirt, pine trees pressed close on both sides. "About what I said." Boone's voice barely carried over the wagon wheels. "Back there." Clara waited. He didn't continue. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Clara watched the landscape roll past. Endless sky stretched overhead, painted gold and crimson by the dying light. Beautiful and empty, they climbed steadily upward. The air grew thin and cold. Clara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Boone's cabin appeared as they crested a ridge, small but solid, built from split logs and mountain stone. Smoke drifted from the chimney. A garden plot lay dormant in the yard. Home. Boone's voice held no warmth. He helped her down from the wagon. His hands were strong and calloused. They lingered on her waist for just a moment before pulling away. Inside, the cabin was sparse but tidy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. Simple furniture filled the space, everything clean and carefully arranged. "You can have the bed." Boone gestured toward a door. "I'll take the floor," Clara nodded. Her throat felt tight. Boone busied himself with her bag. His movements were jerky, nervous. "There's stew on the fire and coffee." "Thank you." Such polite strangers, such careful distance. Clara moved toward the bedroom door, paused with her hand on the latch. "Mr. Callahan, Boone," she turned back. "What happened 12 years ago?" His face went pale as winter sky. The question hung between them like a blade. "Nothing you need to worry about." His voice was rough, final, but Clara could see the lie in his eyes, could feel it in the careful way he held himself apart from her. Something had happened 12 years ago. Something that made him afraid to touch her. Something that would change everything once she learned the truth. Clara woke to the sound of splitting wood. Gray dawn filtered through thin curtains. The bed beside her was cold and untouched. She dressed quickly in the chill air. Her breath made small clouds in the morning light. Outside, Boone worked the axe with mechanical precision. Each swing sent chips flying into the frost-covered grass. His shirt was already damp with sweat despite the cold. He didn't look up when she appeared in the doorway. "Coffee's hot." His voice was flat, distant. Clara poured herself a cup from the pot hanging over the fire. The liquid was black and bitter, strong enough to wake the dead. She watched Boone through the window. He moved with the economy of a man who had lived alone too long. No wasted motion, no unnecessary sound. After breakfast, he saddled the bay mare. "Need supplies from town." "I'll come with you." "No need." The words hit her chest with surprising force. Clara set down her cup with careful control. "I see." Boone's jaw tightened. He adjusted the saddle strap twice, 3 times. "It's not safe." "For who?" He mounted the horse without answering, rode down the mountain trail without looking back. Clara spent the morning exploring the cabin. Everything was clean but worn, functional. A man's space with no softness anywhere. In the bedroom, she found a loose floorboard. Beneath it, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay a photograph. A woman's face stared back at her. Dark skin, high cheekbones, eyes that held laughter and warmth. Clara's hands trembled. The resemblance was unmistakable. They could have been sisters. She studied every detail. The woman's dress was fine quality. Her hair was styled with care. This was no chance encounter captured by a traveling photographer. This was love. Clara wrapped the photograph carefully and replaced the floorboard, but the image burned in her mind. Those laughing eyes, that familiar face. Boone returned at sunset with flour and salt and coffee. He avoided her gaze while unloading supplies. "There's talk in town." His voice was carefully neutral. "What kind of talk?" "About you, about us." Clara waited. The silence stretched thin as wire. "Some folks aren't happy about the arrangement." "Which folks?" Boone's hand stilled on a sack of beans. "Sheriff Blackwood came by Martha's place, asked questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that get people hurt." That night, Clara lay awake listening to Boone move restlessly on the floor below. The photograph haunted her thoughts. Who was the woman? Where was she now? Why did Clara look so much like her? Morning brought frost and the sound of hoofbeats. Clara peered through the curtain. 3 men sat their horses at the edge of the clearing. They wore dusty clothes and carried rifles across their saddles. Boone emerged from the cabin. His hand rested easy on his gun belt. The men spoke in voices too low to carry. Clara caught fragments, words that made her blood run cold. "Pretty thing," "asking for trouble," "ought to know better." The riders left without dismounting, but their eyes lingered on the cabin, on the windows where Clara might be watching. "Friends of yours?" Clara asked when Boone came inside. "No." "Then what did they want?" Boone poured coffee with steady hands, but Clara saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing toward the door. "Doesn't matter what they want." But it did matter. Clara could see it in the set of his jaw, the careful way he cleaned his rifle that evening. 2 days later, Martha Sinclair arrived with a basket of preserves and worried eyes. "Thought you might like some company." Martha's smile was strained. "Gets lonely up here." They sat by the fire while Boone worked outside. Martha's hands worked nervously at her apron. "He's a good man." The words came sudden and fierce. "Whatever you might hear, whatever folks say." "What do they say?" Martha's mouth pressed into a thin line. "That he's cursed, that trouble follows him." "Do you believe that?" "I believe a man can carry grief too long. Let it poison everything good in his life." Clara waited. Martha stared into the flames. "He had a wife before, Sarah." The name came soft as prayer. "Sweet girl, beautiful, they were happy." "What happened to her?" "Killed. 12 years ago." Martha's voice went flat. "Stage robbery on the road to Denver, shot down for the money in her purse." Clara's chest tightened. "That's terrible." Boone went half mad with grief. Blamed himself for letting her travel alone. Martha looked up with sharp eyes. "He's been dead inside ever since, until now." "Until now?" "Until you arrived looking just like her." The words hit Clara like cold water. She set down her cup with shaking hands. "Just like her," Martha nodded. "Same face, same build, same way of holding yourself proud despite everything." Clara thought of the photograph hidden beneath the floorboards. Those laughing eyes that matched her own. "Is that why he sent for me, because I look like her?" "I don't know." Martha's voice was gentle. "But I know he's been different since you came. Less like a ghost, more like a man." That evening, Martha's horse threw a shoe. She would have to stay the night. Clara made up a bed by the fire while the wind howled outside. Boone sat cleaning his rifle with mechanical precision. "Storm's coming." Martha watched the windows rattle. "Bad one by the sound." Boone's hand stilled on the gun barrel. "We'll be fine." But Clara heard something in his voice, a tension that had nothing to do with weather. Near midnight she woke to voices outside, low and urgent, men moving through the darkness. Clara crept to the window. Shadows drifted between the trees, too many to count. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of the riders who had come asking questions, the sheriff with his cold eyes. Boone appeared beside her. His rifle was loaded and ready. "Stay away from the windows." "What do they want?" His face was stone in the moonlight. "Me?" But Clara knew better. They wanted her too, the woman who looked like Sarah, the stranger who had stirred up old ghosts. The wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Somewhere in the darkness, men waited with guns and bad intentions. Clara pressed her hand to the glass. Her reflection stared back, ghostly and strange. She looked like a dead woman, and that resemblance might get them all killed. The shadows moved closer to the cabin. Clara counted at least 6 shapes drifting between the pines. Their boots crunched on frozen ground. Boone extinguished the oil lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. "Pack light." His voice was barely a whisper. "Only what you need." Clara's hands moved by instinct. Her few dresses, the small Bible her mother had given her, the gold locket that held no picture yet. Martha was already awake, stuffing supplies into a canvas sack. Her movements were quick and sure. She had done this before. The back trail. Martha's breath made small clouds in the cold air. "Through Devil's Gap." Boone nodded. He shouldered his rifle and a pack heavy with ammunition. His face was carved stone in the moonlight. They slipped out the back door. The wind cut through Clara's coat with icy teeth. Snow had begun to fall in fat, lazy flakes. Behind them, voices called out. Rough men with hard intentions. "Callahan, we know you're in there." The voice belonged to Sheriff Blackwood. Clara recognized the flat, dangerous tone. "Come out peaceful. Bring the woman." Boone's jaw tightened. He motioned Clara and Martha toward the tree line. They moved through the forest in single file. Boone led with sure steps despite the darkness. Martha followed. Clara brought up the rear, her heart hammering against her ribs. The trail was little more than a deer path. It wound upward through stands of pine and aspen. Snow fell heavier now, muffling their footsteps. Behind them, orange light bloomed against the trees. The cabin was burning. Clara turned to look back. Flames licked at the windows where she had slept, where she had found the photograph of the woman who looked like her. "Don't look back." Boone's voice was rough with something that might have been grief. They climbed higher. The air grew thin and sharp. Clara's lungs burned with each breath. At dawn, they reached a small cave hidden behind a curtain of ice. Boone had supplies cached here: blankets, dried meat, coffee grounds wrapped in old paper. "How long?" Martha's question hung in the frigid air. "Until they give up looking." Boone built a small fire at the cave mouth. Could be days, could be weeks. Clara wrapped herself in a wool blanket. Her fingers were numb despite the growing warmth. "Why are they hunting you?" Boone fed twigs to the flames. Each stick caught and flared. His face remained in shadow. "Old business." "What kind of old business gets a cabin burned down?" Martha shot Clara a warning look. But Clara was tired of secrets, tired of walking blind through someone else's war. "The kind that gets people killed." Boone's voice was flat as winter sky. He stood and walked to the cave entrance. Snow continued to fall in thick curtains. The world beyond was white and silent. Her name was Sarah. The words came so quiet Clara almost missed them. "My wife." Clara's chest tightened. She thought of the photograph hidden beneath burning floorboards. She was traveling to Denver, visiting her sister. Boone's shoulders were rigid. "Stage got robbed outside Canyon Creek." "I'm sorry." 3 men, masked, shot the driver first. Then the guard, his hands clenched into fists. Sarah tried to run. The fire crackled and popped. Martha stared into the flames. They could have just taken the money. The jewelry could have let her live. Boone's voice cracked. "But they put a bullet in her back." Clara felt tears sting her eyes. "That's not your fault. I should have gone with her, should have protected her. You couldn't have known." Boone turned from the cave mouth. His eyes were hollow with old pain. "I could have, should have, doesn't matter now." But it did matter. Clara could see how the guilt had eaten at him. 12 years of blaming himself for something beyond his control. "The men who killed her." Clara's voice was steady. "They were never caught." Something flickered across Boone's face. "They're and gone before Clara could read it." "No, never caught." The lie tasted bitter in the small space. Clara heard it in the careful way he shaped the words. They spent 3 days in the cave. Boone ventured out each morning to check for signs of pursuit. He always returned with fresh snow on his boots and worry in his eyes. Clara learned to build fires that gave off little smoke, to cook beans and bacon over coals, to melt snow for washing and drinking. She watched Boone move through these tasks with practiced efficiency. A man who had lived rough before, who knew how to survive when the world turned hostile. On the 3rd night, Martha developed a fever. Her face burned hot to the touch. She shivered despite the blankets wrapped around her shoulders. "Lung fever." Boone's diagnosis was grim. "She needs medicine. Real shelter. There's a lined shack." Martha's voice was weak but determined. 2 miles north, Old Trapper's Place. "Is it safe?" "Safer than here." They moved Martha at first light. She leaned heavy on Clara's arm. Her breathing came shallow and quick. The lined shack squatted in a clearing between 2 ridges, built from logs and chinked with mud. Solid but small. Inside, Boone built up the fire while Clara settled Martha on the single bunk. The older woman's skin was gray with exhaustion. "Need willow bark." Martha's words came between chattering teeth. "For the fever." Clara found the bark growing near a frozen stream. She stripped it with her knife and boiled it over the fire. The liquid was bitter, but Martha drank it without complaint. That evening, as Martha slept fitfully, Clara and Boone sat by the fire. The silence stretched between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. "You look like her." The words came sudden and raw. "When I first saw you step off that stage." Clara's breath caught. "Is that why you sent for me?" Boone stared into the flames. I told myself it was coincidence, that all women of your people looked similar. But you knew better. I knew better. The fire popped and sparked. Outside, wind howled through the pines. I'm not her. Clara's voice was quiet but firm. I'm not Sarah. I know. Do you? Boone looked up then. His eyes held pain and something else. Something that might have been hope. You're stronger than her. Tougher. His voice was rough with honesty. Sarah was gentle, soft. You've got steel in your spine. Steel doesn't keep you warm at night. No, but it keeps you alive. Clara pulled her blanket tighter. The compliment felt strange. Backhanded but honest in a way that cut deep. Those men who killed her, you know who they are. It wasn't a question. Boone's face went stone still. I know. And Sheriff Blackwood, he was there. The words hung in the air between them, sharp as winter wind. Clara understood then why they were running, why the cabin had burned, why Boone had lived alone for 12 years. He wasn't just grieving his wife. He was hunting her killers. And now Clara was part of that hunt, whether she wanted to be or not. Martha's fever broke on the 4th day. Her skin cooled and her breathing steadied. Clara helped her sit up to take broth made from dried meat and wild onions. You saved my life. Martha's voice was weak but grateful. Boone found the medicine. Boone found the bark. You made it work. Outside, snow continued to fall. The world had gone white and silent. Even the wind had stilled. Boone returned from checking his snares with 2 rabbits and worry lines etched deep around his eyes. Tracks in the snow, half a mile south. How many? Clara asked. 3 riders, moving careful, staying to the tree line. Martha struggled to sit straighter. They won't give up. No, they won't. Clara watched Boone skin the rabbits with quick, efficient cuts. His hands were steady, but his jaw was tight. Why is this so important to them? It's been 12 years. Boone's knife paused. Some secrets don't die with time. What secrets? He resumed his work. Blood stained the snow beneath his hands. Sarah wasn't just visiting her sister in Denver. The words hung in the cold air. Clara waited. She was carrying something, documents, letters. What kind of documents? Boone's hands stilled on the rabbit fur. The kind that could hang men. Martha nodded grimly. Sarah worked for a lawyer in town, kept his books, filed his papers. She found something. Boone's voice was flat. Something about land deals, bribes, money changing hands. Clara felt pieces clicking together in her mind. Sheriff Blackwood was involved. Blackwood, the mayor, half the town council. Boone stood and walked to the window. They were stealing from homesteaders, forcing sales, taking land that wasn't theirs to take. And Sarah had proof. She had proof. The fire crackled in the silence. Clara stared into the flames and thought about a woman she had never met, a woman who looked like her, who had died trying to expose corruption. The stage robbery was planned. Clara's voice was quiet. They knew she would be on that coach. They knew, but they never found the documents. Boone turned from the window. His eyes were hard as winter stone, because Sarah hid them before she left town. Where? That's what they've been trying to find out for 12 years. Clara understood now. The men watching the cabin, the sheriff's questions, the fear in Martha's eyes. They think you know where Sarah hid the evidence. They think I know, or they think you might know. Me, how could I know anything? Boone's expression shifted. Something careful and guarded moved behind his eyes. You look like her, sound like her sometimes. His voice was too casual. They might think she told you something before she died. The lie sat heavy in the small room. Clara could taste it on her tongue. That's not why they're hunting me. Boone turned back to the window. Isn't it? Clara stood and moved to face him. Look at me. He kept his gaze fixed on the falling snow. Look at me, Boone. Slowly he turned. His eyes were full of old pain and fresh guilt. What aren't you telling me? Nothing that matters now. Everything matters now. Those men burned your cabin. They're hunting us through a blizzard. They won't stop until they find what they're looking for. Martha coughed weakly from the bunk. Tell her, Boone, she has a right to know. Boone's shoulders sagged. He looked older suddenly, worn down by years of carrying secrets. There's a cache, hidden in the rocks above Devil's Canyon. His voice was barely a whisper. Sarah told me about it before she left, said if anything happened to her I should look there. You found the documents. I found them. Then why haven't you used them? Why haven't you brought these men to justice? Boone's laugh was bitter as winter wind. Justice? From who? Blackwood owns the sheriff's office, the mayor's in his pocket, half the territorial government takes his money. There has to be someone. Federal marshals, maybe. If I could get to them, if I could stay alive long enough to tell the story. Clara felt understanding dawn cold and heavy in her chest. That's why you brought me here, not because I look like Sarah. Boone's face went pale. Clara, you need a witness, someone who can carry the story if you don't survive. It's not that simple, isn't it? Martha struggled to sit up. There's more, child, more you need to know. Boone shot her a warning look. Martha ignored it. The documents Sarah found, they weren't just about land deals. Clara's blood went cold. What else? Names, dates, records of who got hurt when they resisted. Martha's voice was steady despite her weakness. People who died defending their homes. Murder. Wholesale slaughter dressed up as accidents and robberies. Clara sank into a chair by the fire. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. How many people? Dozens. Maybe more. Boone's voice was hollow. Families, children. The fire popped and sparked. Outside, the wind picked up again. Snow rattled against the windows. Sarah died because she tried to stop it. Sarah died because she believed in justice. Martha's eyes were fierce despite her fever. She thought the law would protect good people from bad ones. She was wrong. She was wrong. Clara stared into the flames and thought about the photograph hidden beneath burning floorboards. A woman with laughing eyes who had died believing the world was better than it was. Show me. Boone looked up sharply. What? The documents. Show me what Sarah died for. Clara, you don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. She stood and faced him across the small room. Those men out there think I know something. They're going to keep hunting me until I'm dead or they get what they want. We can run, go to California, start over, and let them keep killing innocent people. Boone's face crumpled. I can't lose you too. The words hung between them, raw and desperate. Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Not love exactly, not yet, but the possibility of love, the recognition of a man worth saving. Then don't lose me. Her voice was steady. Fight with me. Martha smiled from the bunk. Smart girl. I told you she had steel in her spine. Boone stared at Clara for a long moment. Outside, the wind howled through the pines. Snow continued to fall on a world gone white and dangerous. Finally, he nodded. The cache is 2 miles from here, hidden in a rock slide above the canyon. When do we go? Dawn, if the storm breaks. Clara moved to the window. Through the swirling snow, she thought she saw movement in the trees, dark shapes against white ground. They were running out of time. The men who had killed Sarah were closing in, and this time they wouldn't let anyone escape to tell the tale. Dawn came gray and bitter. The storm had moved east, leaving behind a world carved from ice and silence. Boone shouldered his pack and rifle. Clara wrapped extra ammunition in oiled cloth. Martha would stay behind, still too weak for the journey ahead. Be careful. Martha gripped Clara's hand. Her fingers were thin but strong. Both of you. They left the line shack as the sun crested the eastern peaks. Their boots crunched through snow that reached Clara's knees. Each step sent up small clouds of powder that caught the early light. The trail to Devil's Canyon wound through stands of pine and aspen. Boone moved ahead, reading the landscape with practiced eyes. Clara followed in his tracks, her breath making white puffs in the frigid air. They climbed steadily upward. The air grew thin and sharp. Clara's lungs burned with each inhalation. At midday, they reached a ridge overlooking the canyon. Far below, a frozen stream wound between walls of red stone. The world stretched out in every direction, white and endless. Boone pointed to a jumble of rocks on the canyon's north face. There. The cache was hidden in a crevice between 2 massive boulders. Boone had to lie flat and reach deep into the crack to retrieve the metal box. Inside, wrapped in waterproof canvas, lay Sarah's evidence. Letters, ledgers, legal documents covered in careful handwriting. Clara read over Boone's shoulder. The words painted a picture of systematic corruption, land stolen from families, money paid to officials, people who asked questions had accidents. My God, Clara's voice was barely a whisper. One name appeared again and again. Ezra Blackwood, sheriff, judge, executioner. There's enough here to hang a dozen men. Boone's hands shook as he turned the pages. Clara studied the dates, the careful documentation. Sarah was thorough. She was meticulous, kept records of everything. At the bottom of the box lay another document, newer paper, different handwriting. Clara unfolded it carefully. Her heart stopped. Birth certificate. Clara Mayfield. Born 1851 in Atlanta, Georgia. Father unknown. Mother listed as Ruth Mayfield. But there was another name on the certificate, a sister, Sarah Ruth Mayfield. Born 1848. The paper slipped from Clara's numb fingers. It fluttered to the snow between them. You knew, her voice came flat and cold. Boone wouldn't meet her eyes. Clara, you knew I was her sister. I suspected. You suspected or you knew. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Wind whistled through the canyon below. Sarah talked about you, her little sister who got taken by the church. Boone's voice was rough with guilt. Said she'd been looking for you for years. Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew crumbled into dust. The mail-order bride advertisement, it wasn't random. No, you placed it where you knew I would see it. Boone nodded miserably. The church in Atlanta. Sarah said that's where they took you. Clara staggered backward. Her heel caught in the snow and she nearly fell. I was bait. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Wasn't it? You needed someone who looked like Sarah. Someone who could draw out her killers. That's not why I married you, isn't it? Boone reached for her. Clara jerked away from his touch. At first, maybe, but Clara, what I feel for you now. What you feel for me. Or what you felt for her. The question hung in the frozen air between them. Boone's face crumpled. I don't know anymore. The honesty cut deeper than any lie could have. Clara wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. She was looking for me when she died. Yes. The trip to Denver, she wasn't just visiting her sister. She'd gotten word. Someone thought they'd seen you there. Clara closed her eyes. Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. She died because of me. She died because she chose to fight corruption. You had nothing to do with it. But Clara could see the truth in his haunted eyes. Sarah had been distracted, careless, thinking about a sister she hadn't seen in 20 years, and that distraction had gotten her killed. How long have you known who I was? Since the day you stepped off that stage. Boone's voice was barely audible. You have her eyes, her way of standing, but you waited until now to tell me. I was afraid you'd run. I should run. Please don't. Clara stared down at the birth certificate half buried in snow. 2 sisters, both orphaned young, one dead 12 years. One standing in a frozen canyon discovering her life was built on lies. Did you love her? The question came quiet as snowfall. Boone's breath made white clouds in the bitter air. Yes. Do you love me? I think so. But I don't know if it's you I love or the memory of her. Another brutal honesty. Clara almost preferred his lies. Movement caught her eye. Far below in the canyon, dark shapes moved against the white ground. Men on horseback. Following their trail through the snow, they found us. Clara's voice was steady despite the chaos in her heart. Boone followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. 3 riders, maybe 4. Blackwood. Has to be. Clara looked at the scattered documents. Sarah's life work spread across the snow. Proof of murder and corruption. Evidence that could bring justice to dozens of victims. Evidence that would die with them if they didn't move fast. How long before they reach us? Hour. Maybe less. Clara knelt and began gathering the papers. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. What are you doing? What Sarah would have done. Clara's voice was cold as winter stone. What my sister died trying to do. Clara, we need to run. I'm done running. She stood with the documents clutched against her chest. The wind whipped her hair across her face. They killed my sister. They burned your home. They've terrorized this territory for 12 years. And they'll kill us too if we stay. Clara looked at him across the space between them. This man who had used her, manipulated her, married her under false pretenses. This man who had loved her sister, who might love her too if he could untangle his heart from his ghosts. Then we die fighting. Boone stared at her for a long moment. Then he shouldered his rifle and nodded. Sarah would have said the same thing. I'm not Sarah. No, you're not. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth from his body. You're stronger than she was, braver. Am I? Sarah ran when she sensed danger. You're standing your ground. Clara looked down at the riders climbing toward them, men with guns and bad intentions, men who had killed before and would kill again. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alive. The wind picked up, sending snow devils dancing across the canyon rim. Below them, the riders urged their horses up the narrow trail. Clara thought about a sister she had never known, a woman who had died looking for her, who had fought corruption and lost. But the fight wasn't over. The evidence still existed. The truth could still come to light, if they could stay alive long enough to tell it. The riders reached the canyon rim as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks. Sheriff Blackwood led them, his badge catching the dying light. 3 men flanked him, all carrying rifles across their saddles. Clara and Boone had taken position behind the boulder pile. The rocks would provide cover but also trap them if the shooting started. Callahan, Blackwood's voice echoed off the canyon walls. We know you're up there. Boone remained silent. His rifle was loaded and ready. Found what you were looking for, did you? Blackwood dismounted and moved closer. Sarah's little treasure box. Clara's breath caught. They knew about the cache. 12 years is a long time to wait. Blackwood's boots crunched through the snow. But I'm a patient man. Patient enough to murder innocent people. Clara's voice rang clear across the frozen ground. Blackwood stopped. His eyes found her among the rocks. Well, now the sister shows herself. His smile was cold as winter stone. You do look just like her. Same proud way of holding your head. Same willingness to die for the truth. If necessary. Clara stood slowly. The documents were secure in her coat pocket, proof of years of corruption and murder. These papers tell quite a story, Sheriff. Papers can burn, people too. But the truth endures. Blackwood laughed. The sound was harsh against the canyon silence. Truth is what powerful men say it is, always has been. Boone rose beside Clara. His rifle was trained on Blackwood's chest. Maybe, but sometimes the truth finds a way. Like it did with Sarah. Sarah made mistakes, got careless. Sarah got murdered. Sarah got what people get when they stick their noses where they don't belong. The wind picked up, sending snow swirling between the rocks. Clara felt the papers crinkle against her ribs. The federal marshals in Denver. Clara's voice was steady. They'll be very interested in these documents. Will they now? Blackwood's hand rested on his gun butt. Assuming you live long enough to reach Denver. Assuming you live long enough to stop us. The threat hung in the frigid air. 4 men against 2. The odds were not favorable, but Clara had something Blackwood's men didn't. The certainty of fighting for something larger than herself. You killed my sister. I killed a woman who threatened the natural order of things. The natural order. Rich men get richer. Poor folks learn their place. Simple. Clara felt fury rise in her chest, clean and hot as forge fire. Sarah's place was beside her husband, raising children, living free. Sarah's place was in the ground the moment she opened that lawyer's files. Boone's finger tightened on his trigger. Enough talk. Agreed. The shooting started with Blackwood's draw. His pistol cleared leather smooth and fast, but Boone was faster. The sheriff staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. His men scattered for cover behind their horses. Clara kept low among the rocks. Bullets whined overhead, chipping stone and sending fragments flying. Boone worked his rifle with deadly precision. Each shot was measured, deliberate. A man who had spent 12 years preparing for this moment. One of Blackwood's men cried out and fell. Another dove behind a fallen log. The horses reared and plunged, wild with fear. Clara saw her chance. While the men focused on Boone, she could slip away. carry Sarah's evidence to safety. She began to move through the rocks, staying low, using the boulder pile for cover. A hand grabbed her ankle. Blackwood, bleeding but still dangerous, had crawled around the rocks. Going somewhere, Clara kicked at his face. Her boot caught him in the nose. Blood streamed down his chin, but his grip held firm. He dragged her from the rocks into the open ground. "Callahan," Blackwood's voice was thick with blood, "come out or the woman dies." The shooting stopped. Silence fell over the canyon like a blanket. Boone appeared from behind the rocks. His hands were raised, but his eyes were hard as winter ice. "Let her go. Drop the rifle." Boone hesitated. Clara could see the calculation in his eyes, the terrible mathematics of survival. "The documents." Blackwood pressed his gun to Clara's temple. "Hand them over." Clara felt the papers crinkle against her chest. Sarah's life work, the proof that could bring justice to dozens of victims. "They're not yours to take. Everything in this territory is mine to take." Clara looked at Boone across the snow-covered ground. This man who had used her, deceived her, led her into mortal danger. This man who had loved her sister, who might love her too, given time. "Do it." Clara's voice was steady. "Give him what he wants." Boone's face crumpled. "Clara, trust me." Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or just desperate hope. Boone reached into his coat, drew out a bundle of papers, threw them at Blackwood's feet. The sheriff smiled and released his grip on Clara's arm. She stumbled forward but remained standing. "Smart man. Too bad it's 12 years too late." Blackwood bent to retrieve the documents. As his attention shifted, Clara struck. Her knife, hidden in her boot, flashed in the dying sunlight. The blade found its mark between Blackwood's ribs. He gasped and fell backward. The remaining gunmen broke cover, but federal marshals were already riding up the canyon trail. Martha had reached town after all, had brought help. The fight ended quickly after that. Blackwood's men surrendered without the sheriff to lead them. Clara knelt beside Blackwood in the bloody snow. He was dying but still conscious. "The papers you threw at his feet." Clara's voice was quiet. "Those weren't Sarah's documents." Blackwood's eyes widened. "What?" "Blank pages. The real evidence is still safe." The sheriff tried to speak, but only blood came out. He died with his eyes fixed on the darkening sky. 2 weeks later, Clara and Boone stood in the Denver courthouse. Federal prosecutors had the evidence they needed. Indictments were being prepared. Justice would finally come to the Montana territory. Outside, snow was falling again. But spring was coming. Clara could feel it in the warming air. "What happens now?" Boone's question was quiet. "Now we find out if we can build something real together, despite everything that's happened. Because of everything that's happened." Clara looked at this man who had brought her into danger, who had used her resemblance to his dead wife, who had nearly gotten them both killed. This man who had also fought beside her, trusted her when it mattered, helped her find justice for a sister she had never known. "I'm not Sarah, I know. I never will be, I know. Can you love me for who I am, not who I remind you of?" Boone was quiet for a long moment. When he looked at her, his eyes were clear, free of ghosts for the first time since she had known him. "I already do." He reached out slowly, carefully, as if she might disappear if he moved too fast. His fingers touched her cheek, warm despite the cold. "I haven't touched a black woman in 12 years. His voice was soft, full of wonder. "But I'm ready to start living again." Clara leaned into his touch. The past was buried with Sarah and her killers. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. They had found each other through deception and danger, through loss and the long hunger for justice. But they would build their love on truth, on the solid ground of shared purpose and mutual respect. The snow continued to fall on the Denver streets, but Clara felt only warmth, only hope, only the promise of new beginnings rising from the ashes of old grief. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.